March 24th, 1943, 22,000 feet above the Ruhr Valley. 01:37 hours, Hauptmann Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer eased his Messerschmitt Bf 110 G4 into position beneath the Lancaster bomber, invisible in the absolute darkness 200 feet below the British aircraft. His radar operator, Oberfeldwebel Fritz Rumpelhart, studied the Lichtenstein BC radar scope, watching the blip that represented their target drift toward the center of the display. "Contact holding," Rumpelhart reported calmly. "Range 150 meters, slightly left." Schnaufer adjusted course fractionally, bringing his fighter into the perfect firing position directly below the bomber's vulnerable belly, where defensive guns couldn't traverse. Through his Rivi gun sight, he could now distinguish the Lancaster's dark silhouette against the slightly lighter sky. The British crew had no idea death approached from below. They couldn't see in the darkness, possessed no downward-looking radar, and their electronic countermeasures couldn't detect the German Lichtenstein frequency. "Firing!" Schnaufer announced quietly, squeezing the trigger. 4 20mm cannons and two 7.92mm machine guns erupted in a converging pattern of fire. Tracer rounds walked across the bomber's fuselage. The port inner engine exploded. Fuel streamed from ruptured tanks, igniting immediately. The Lancaster rolled violently left, trailing flame, before beginning its death spiral toward the German countryside below. "Confirmed," Rumpelhart noted, marking their 42nd kill. "The British still fly blind at night. They can't see us, can't detect us, can't defend themselves. This is shooting practice." What Schnaufer and his radar operator didn't know, what none of the Luftwaffe night fighter force could have anticipated, was that at that precise moment, several hundred miles northwest, over the North Sea, British bombers were being fitted with a revolutionary radar system that would transform them from hunted prey into hunters themselves. Within 6 months, the centimetric H2S radar being installed in RAF bombers would allow British crews to detect German night fighters from distances exceeding 50 miles, turning the Luftwaffe's invisible hunters into visible targets. The technological advantage that had given German night fighters supremacy since 1941 was about to evaporate. The darkness that had protected them would become their death trap. British aircraft, equipped with radar operating on wavelengths German scientists believed impossible to generate with sufficient power, would see everything: the fighters stalking them, the landscape below, even individual cities from 25,000 feet. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the transformation would be so swift that German pilots would die confused about how British bombers suddenly knew exactly where they were. This story is about how technological superiority reversed completely in less than a year, how wavelength physics determined aerial combat outcomes, and how British scientific innovation transformed bombers from defenseless victims into predators that could hunt their hunters. The Luftwaffe night fighter force that had seemed invincible in early 1943 would be driven from the night sky by electromagnetic radiation they couldn't detect, emitted by equipment they couldn't build, based on physics they understood too late. The Luftwaffe's night fighter force, Nachtjagd, had emerged from the crucible of RAF Bomber Command's night offensive against German cities. When Germany failed to defeat Britain in daylight combat during the Battle of Britain in 1940, RAF Bomber Command shifted to night operations, where German defenses proved initially ineffective. General Joseph Kammhuber, appointed to command Germany's night fighter defenses in July 1940, built a sophisticated defense network along Germany's western frontier. The Kammhuber Line, as it became known, divided airspace into boxes approximately 20 miles wide and 40 miles deep, each covered by searchlights, anti-aircraft guns, and a dedicated night fighter patrol. Initially, German night fighters relied on visual detection, searchlights illuminating bombers for fighters to attack. The system achieved limited success. Experienced pilots like Oberleutnant Helmut Lent scored kills by stalking bomber streams and attacking visually illuminated targets. But success rates remained low. Most bombers passed through the defensive boxes undetected in darkness. The breakthrough came in August 1941 with deployment of the Fuji-202 Lichtenstein BC radar. Developed by Telefunken, the Lichtenstein operated on 490 MHz frequency with a detection range of approximately 4 kilometers. The system gave German night fighters the ability to locate bombers in complete darkness without relying on searchlights. The Lichtenstein radar transformed night fighting from random visual search to systematic electronic hunt. A fighter equipped with Lichtenstein could patrol assigned airspace, detect approaching bombers on radar, close to visual range, and attack from positions where defensive fire was impossible. The bomber crews, lacking any warning system for radar-equipped fighters, died without knowing what killed them. Major Werner Streib demonstrated the new system's potential on the night of August 9, 1941, scoring Germany's first radar-assisted night fighter kill near Arnhem. His Bf-110 detected a Wellington bomber at 3 kilometers range, close to visual identification distance, and attacked from below. The Wellington exploded, struck by cannon fire its crew never saw coming. By early 1942, Lichtenstein-equipped night fighters were achieving kill rates that terrorized RAF Bomber Command. Hauptmann Ludwig Becker, flying from Leeuwarden in Holland, destroyed 5 bombers in a single night on January 21, 1942, all detected initially by radar. The psychological impact was devastating. British bomber crews knew German fighters possessed some capability to find them in darkness, but understood neither the technology nor how to counter it. Wing Commander Guy Gibson, who would later lead the famous Dams raid, survived a Lichtenstein-guided attack over the Ruhr in March 1942. His post-mission report captured the terror. "We were attacked from below without warning. The fighter must have been tracking us. The attack was too precise to be chance encounter. We had no indication of his presence before cannon shells struck the fuselage. The gunner never saw the fighter, only tracer fire emerging from absolute darkness below." The Lichtenstein system's advantages over British technology were substantial. RAF bombers in 1942 possessed no airborne radar beyond the obsolete AI Mk4 used in night fighters. They relied on visual lookout by gunners, straining to see in darkness against attacking fighters who could detect them electronically from miles away. The asymmetry was catastrophic. German night fighter tactics evolved to exploit this advantage ruthlessly. The standard attack profile positioned the fighter below and behind the bomber, approaching from the blind spot where belly turrets couldn't traverse. Radar allowed precise positioning without visual cues. The bomber crew's first indication of attack was often cannon shells exploding through their aircraft. Oberst Victor von Lossberg, commanding Nachtjagdgeschwader II in early 1942, described the tactical situation in his operational directive. "The Lichtenstein gives us complete advantage. We detect the enemy before he sees us. We position for optimal attack. We fire from ranges where his defensive guns cannot respond effectively. The British fly blind while we hunt with electronic eyes. Maintain this advantage and victory is assured." The statistics confirmed German supremacy. In May 1942, RAF Bomber Command lost 169 aircraft, 5.4% of sorties dispatched. In June, losses reached 6.1%. These rates, sustained over months, were unsustainable. Bomber Command crews calculated their life expectancy in missions, not months. The average survival was 14 operations before death or capture. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, commanding RAF Bomber Command, faced a crisis. The night bombing offensive, Britain's primary means of striking Germany, was bleeding itself to death against night fighter defenses. Without technological countermeasures, the offensive would collapse. But British scientists were developing solutions that would revolutionize night combat completely. At the Telecommunications Research Establishment in Malvern, a team led by Dr. Bernard Lovell was perfecting a radar system so advanced that German scientists believed it impossible to create with current technology. The H-2S radar, named with deliberately obscure designation to confuse German intelligence, operated on 10-centimeter wavelength, dramatically shorter than the meter-wave radars Germany employed. The cavity magnetron, a British invention that escaped to America through the Teasard mission in 1940, generated microwave radiation at power levels previously thought impossible. Operating on centimetric wavelengths provided revolutionary advantages. The shorter wavelength allowed much smaller antenna assemblies, permitted higher resolution mapping, and critically made the radar emissions nearly impossible for German equipment to detect because German receivers were designed for meter wave frequencies. H-2S was designed primarily as a navigation radar, allowing bombers to map terrain and locate cities through cloud cover. But the development team quickly realized the system could detect aircraft. The high-resolution display showed not only ground features, but also moving targets, including fighters attempting to intercept the bomber. The first operational H-2S sets were installed in Pathfinder Force aircraft in January 1943. Wing Commander John Serrate, flying with 83 Squadron, received one of the first operational H-2S installations. His initial flights revealed capabilities that stunned RAF intelligence officers. The display showed Hamburg from 25,000 feet with clarity exceeding visual observation on a clear day, Serrate reported after a January 30th mission. Rivers, docks, individual buildings, all clearly visible on the cathode ray tube. But what astonished us was detecting aircraft. We observed contacts approaching from behind at ranges exceeding 40 miles. The Germans had no idea we could see them coming. The tactical implications were revolutionary. British bombers, previously blind to approaching night fighters, could now detect threats at ranges where evasive action was possible. The hunted were becoming hunters. But H-2S was only the first component of Britain's radar revolution. Monica, a tail-warning radar operating on centimetric wavelength, provided dedicated rear surveillance. Installed in bomber tail sections, Monica detected approaching aircraft and alerted crews with audio warnings, different tones for different closure rates. Flight Lieutenant Bill Reed, flying Lancasters with 61 Squadron, described Monica's impact. Previously, we relied on the tail gunner's eyes. He strained to see in absolute darkness while fighters approached with radar guidance. Monica changed everything. The warning tone meant a fighter was closing from behind. We could take evasive action before he reached firing range. The Germans kept attacking from positions we could now detect. Even more devastating to German night fighters was Serrate, a radar detector that homed on Lichtenstein emissions. British night fighters equipped with Serrate could detect German night fighters from ranges exceeding 50 miles by following their radar emissions. The system turned the Lichtenstein from advantage to liability. Every German fighter using radar became a beacon for British hunters. Wing Commander Bram, leading Serrate-equipped Mosquito night fighters, explained the reversal. The Germans relied on Lichtenstein to find bombers. We relied on Serrate to find Germans using Lichtenstein. They advertised their presence with every radar pulse. We followed the emissions directly to them. The hunters had become targets. The transformation of night combat began during the Battle of Hamburg in late July 1943. RAF Bomber Command launched Operation Gomorrah, a series of massive raids intended to destroy Germany's second-largest city. The raids employed H-2S for navigation, Monica for tail warning, and Window, strips of aluminum foil that jammed German radar. The night of July 24-25, 1943, demonstrated the new technological balance devastatingly. Major Hajo Hermann, commanding Luftwaffe Reichs night fighters, deployed 158 fighters against 791 RAF bombers attacking Hamburg. German forces expected significant success. The bomber stream was massive, concentrated, and flying through heavily defended airspace. Instead, disaster struck the defenders. The combination of window-jamming Lichtenstein sets and H-2S, allowing bombers to navigate despite the jamming, created chaos. German fighters detected only jamming returns on their radars. Controllers lost track of bomber streams. Fighters wandered blindly through airspace while bombers, guided by H-2S, found their targets precisely. Oberst Hajo Hermann's post-raid report captured German confusion. The British employed some jamming technique that rendered Lichtenstein completely ineffective. Our fighters detected only noise. Visual interception was attempted, but few contacts were achieved. The enemy demonstrated navigation capability, independent of ground stations. They found Hamburg despite weather conditions that should have prevented visual navigation. Some new technology is enabling their operations. German intelligence analyzed crashed bombers recovered from Hamburg raids. The discovery of H-2S equipment shocked Luftwaffe technical staff. General Josef Kammhuber received reports describing a radar system operating on wavelengths German scientists believed couldn't generate sufficient power for airborne application. General Major Wolfgang Martini, commanding Luftwaffe Signals Intelligence, submitted an assessment to Göring that revealed German technological deficit. The British have developed centimetric radar, generating power outputs our scientists consider impossible with current technology. Their cavity magnetron produces microwave radiation at 10-centimeter wavelength with power exceeding 25 kilowatts. Our attempts to develop similar equipment have failed completely. This technology gives them multiple advantages: navigation, independent of ground stations, target identification through cloud cover, and ability to detect our night fighters. The H-2S operates on frequencies our Lichtenstein cannot detect. They can see us while we cannot detect their surveillance. The technological balance has shifted catastrophically. The British tactical doctrine evolved to exploit centimetric radar advantages aggressively. Bomber crews with H-2S training learned to monitor for approaching fighters. When contacts appeared on scopes, bombers executed evasive maneuvers, corkscrewing, that threw off German firing solutions. Squadron leader E.W. Anderson, flying with 97 Squadron, described the tactical transformation. Previously, we flew straight and level, hoping gunners might spot attacking fighters. Now H-2S showed contacts closing from behind. We corkscrewed, diving while turning violently before they reached firing range. The Germans clearly didn't expect this. Several times we watched contacts break away, apparently confused that we detected them. Monica tail warning radar became standard equipment in British bombers by late 1943. The system's effectiveness frustrated German pilots accustomed to approaching undetected. Hauptmann Martin Drews, an experienced night fighter ace, described encountering Monica-equipped bombers in his combat diary. October 1943, detected bomber contact at 3 kilometers on Lichtenstein, close to 800 meters for visual identification Lancaster, position below for belly attack. As I prepared to fire, the bomber executed violent corkscrew, diving hard right while turning. He clearly detected my approach. Multiple attempts to reposition failed. Each time I closed, he maneuvered before I achieved firing solution, eventually forced to break away, low on fuel. The British possess some tail warning device. Our advantage of surprise has been compromised. The Serrate system proved even more devastating to German night fighters. RAF Mosquito night fighters, equipped with Serrate detection equipment and centimetric AI-MK-X radar for final intercept, began hunting German fighters over Germany itself. The predators had become prey. Group Captain John Cunningham, leading 85 Squadron's Mosquito night fighters, revolutionized night fighter tactics using Serrate. His unit began offensive patrols over German night fighter assembly beacons, radio transmitters where German fighters gathered before intercepting bomber streams. We followed Serrate contacts directly to German fighters waiting near their beacons. Cunningham explained in his operational report. The Lichtenstein emissions advertised their exact positions. We approached undetected. Our centimetric radar operated on frequencies they couldn't monitor. Visual identification at close range, then attack before they realized we were there. The tables had completely turned. The destruction of Hauptmann Manfred Meurer, one of Germany's top night fighter aces with 65 kills, exemplified the reversal. On the night of January 21, 1944, Meurer's Bf-110 was stalking a bomber stream near Magdeburg. His Lichtenstein radar was transmitting as he searched for targets. Flight Lieutenant Edward Hedgecoe, flying a Serrate-equipped Mosquito, detected Muir's emissions from 40 miles away. Hedgecoe followed the emissions directly to Muir's aircraft, close to visual range using his AI Mk-X radar, and attacked from behind with cannon fire. Muir's fighter exploded, killing one of Germany's most experienced night fighter pilots. The hunter had been hunted, killed by following his own radar emissions. German attempts to counter British centimetric technology failed comprehensively. Telefunken developed the Naxos radar detector to warn night fighters when H-2S was operating nearby. But Naxos only detected H-2S. It couldn't provide the ranging or tracking information Lichtenstein had given. German fighters knew British bombers were near, but couldn't locate them precisely. The Lichtenstein SN2 radar, introduced in late 1943, operated on lower frequencies, less susceptible to window jamming. But SN2 still transmitted on wavelengths Serrate could detect, and its performance was inferior to British centimetric systems. German night fighters using SN2 remained detectable to British electronic warfare, while their own radar provided less precise information than H-2S gave British bombers. German industry attempted to develop centimetric radar equivalents. The Berlin N system, begun in 1943, aimed to create a 9-centimeter airborne radar. But German microwave technology lagged Britain's by at least 2 years. Magnetron development proved beyond German engineering capacity. The Berlin N project consumed resources while delivering no operational equipment. By early 1944, the night battle over Germany had reversed completely. British bombers flew with electronic awareness of the airspace around them. German night fighters operated increasingly blind, their radar advantage evaporated, their emissions making them targets for British hunters. The statistics showed the transformation starkly. In the last quarter of 1943, RAF Bomber Command loss rates dropped to 3.8%, despite increasing raid sizes and deeper penetrations of German airspace. German night fighter losses, conversely, increased to unsustainable levels. In November 1943 alone, Nachtjagd lost 59 fighters and 86 crew, many to Mosquito night fighters using Serrate to hunt the hunters. General Major Josef Schmid, commanding Jagdkorps, responsible for night fighter operations, submitted a desperate assessment to Luftwaffe High Command in December 1943. The British possess comprehensive electronic superiority. Their centimetric radar systems provide capabilities we cannot match. Our fighters are detectable to British equipment from ranges exceeding 80 kilometers, while we struggle to find them at 4 kilometers. British bombers navigate precisely in any weather. They detect our fighters approaching. They execute evasive maneuvers before we achieve firing positions. Their night fighters hunt our aircraft using our own radar emissions to locate us. The technological balance has shifted catastrophically against us. Without equivalent centimetric radar, we cannot restore our advantage. The Nuremberg raid of March 30-31, 1944, appeared to offer temporary German success. Excellent weather, fortunate interception geometry, and overconfident British tactics resulted in 95 RAF bombers destroyed, the highest single raid loss of the war. German night fighters achieved this success primarily through visual combat in clear moonlight, not through radar advantage. But Nuremberg was an anomaly, not a reversal. Subsequent raids showed continued British electronic dominance, the technological advantages that had given Germany superiority in 1941-42 now belonged completely to the RAF. German night fighters that had hunted confidently in darkness now flew with constant awareness that British aircraft could see them approaching from impossible distances. Major Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer, who survived the war as Germany's highest-scoring night fighter ace with 121 confirmed kills, experienced the technological reversal personally. His combat reports from late 1943 and 1944 showed increasing frustration with British electronic capabilities. February 1944, Schnaufer recorded in his logbook, detected bomber on Lichtenstein at 2 kilometers, closed to 800 meters for visual identification. Target executed violent corkscrew before I achieved firing position, clearly detected my approach somehow. 3 more approaches attempted, all countered before firing opportunity achieved. Forced to break away when 2 contacts appeared behind me, British night fighters drawn by my Lichtenstein transmissions. The hunters have become hunted. The introduction of Serrate music, upward-firing cannon installed in German night fighters, represented tactical adaptation to British electronic awareness. If British bombers could detect approaching fighters, German pilots would attack from directly below, where bombers lacked defensive guns and where approach might not trigger radar warnings. Serrate music achieved some success, with aces like Oberleutnant Hans-Joachim Jabs destroying numerous bombers using upward-firing cannon, but this tactic required getting beneath bombers undetected, increasingly difficult when H-2S provided 360-degree surveillance and Monica watched behind. British crews learned to watch for contacts approaching from below and execute evasive maneuvers that prevented German fighters from achieving proper firing positions. By mid-1944, German night fighter effectiveness had collapsed to levels that made missions barely worth the losses. British raids of 800-plus aircraft would lose 15-25 bombers, while German night fighters lost similar numbers attacking them. The exchange rate had reversed from sustainable German advantage to crushing German disadvantage. The Allied invasion of France in June 1944 accelerated German night fighter decline. British Mosquito intruders, guided by Serrate, began attacking German airfields directly. Night fighters attempting to land after combat found British intruders waiting near their bases, guided by Serrate emissions to the German aircraft returning home. Hauptmann Kurt Welter, flying Me-262 jet night fighters in 1945, achieved temporary successes using speed to avoid British radar-guided fighters. But even jets couldn't escape centimetric radar detection. British H-2S and AI Mech-X tracked jets as easily as piston aircraft. The speed advantage was temporary. Radar detected them regardless. The final months of the war saw German night fighter operations reduced to desperate improvisation. Experienced pilots were dead or transferred to day fighters. Replacement pilots received minimal training. Aircraft were obsolete. Electronics were jammed comprehensively. The force that had terrorized RAF Bomber Command in 1942 was shattered by 1945. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, RAF intelligence teams rushed to interview captured night fighter pilots and examine German radar equipment. The technical disparity shocked even British scientists who understood their advantage abstractly. Dr. R.V. Jones, heading British scientific intelligence, examined captured German radar equipment and interviewed Luftwaffe technical officers. His report summarized the technological gulf. German airborne radar remained fundamentally meter-wave technology throughout the war. Despite awareness of our centimetric systems through captured H-2S, they never achieved microwave generation at power levels necessary for effective airborne radar. Their attempts to develop cavity magnetrons failed completely. Without this fundamental component, they couldn't create centimetric radar regardless of other technical competence. The magnetron represented a technology gap they never closed. This single component determined the outcome of the night battle over Germany. General Major Wolfgang Martini, commanding Luftwaffe signals intelligence, was interrogated extensively about German radar development failures. His testimony, recorded by British intelligence in July 1945, revealed German awareness of catastrophic technological deficit. We knew about British centimetric radar from early 1943 when we recovered H-2S equipment from crashed bombers. Our scientists examined the cavity magnetron and understood immediately that this component provided capabilities beyond our current technology. We attempted to develop equivalent systems. Multiple programs were initiated. Substantial resources were allocated, but we never achieved practical microwave generation at required power levels. The physics was understood. The engineering proved impossible with our industrial capacity and materials. By 1944, we understood the night battle was lost technologically. British aircraft possessed comprehensive electronic awareness while we remained partially blind. Our fighters were detectable to their equipment from ranges where our equipment couldn't detect them. This asymmetry was insurmountable through tactics alone. Major Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer, interviewed by RAF intelligence officers in June 1945, provided the fighter pilot's perspective on technological defeat. In 1941 and 1942, we hunted with complete advantage. Lichtenstein allowed us to find bombers in absolute darkness. They flew blind while we tracked them electronically. The kills came easily. Position below, fire. Watch them burn. The British couldn't defend themselves against attacks they couldn't see coming. By late 1943, everything changed. Suddenly they knew when we approached. They maneuvered before we achieved firing position. Our Lichtenstein emissions apparently allowed them to detect us. British night fighters began hunting us over our own territory, guided somehow to our exact positions. The psychological impact was devastating. We had been invisible hunters. Suddenly, we were visible targets. Every Lichtenstein transmission advertised our position to British aircraft equipped with systems we couldn't detect or counter. The advantage had reversed completely. Those of us who survived learned to operate with Lichtenstein, switched off, relying on visual search, but this reduced us to 1940 capabilities, random searching in darkness. Success rates collapsed, losses mounted. By 1944, most of my experienced colleagues were dead, shot down by British aircraft that could see in darkness better than we ever could. Oberst Victor von Lossberg, who had commanded night fighter wings with such confidence in 1942, reflected on the technological defeat in a 1960 interview. We had studied British technology carefully. We knew they were developing radar. We believed our meter wave systems were adequate and that centimetric systems were impossible to create with sufficient power for airborne use. We were catastrophically wrong. The British achieved what our scientists said couldn't be done. The cavity magnetron generated power levels that shouldn't have been possible. This single component, the magnetron, gave them radar systems superior to ours in every parameter: range, resolution, size, and operating frequency, that made them undetectable to our equipment. When I first learned that British bombers could detect my fighters from 50 miles away, while our Lichtenstein struggled to detect bombers at 4 kilometers, I didn't believe it. The asymmetry seemed impossible. But combat results confirmed it. Our hunters became hunted. The night sky that had protected us became a killing ground where we were visible and vulnerable. The lesson is profound. Technological superiority in modern warfare is decisive. Tactical brilliance cannot overcome fundamental technical disadvantage. My pilots were brave, skilled, and experienced, but they flew aircraft equipped with obsolete radar against enemies possessing systems we couldn't match. That disadvantage proved fatal. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, reflecting on the night bombing campaign in his 1947 memoir, credited centimetric radar as decisively as any weapon system. The telecommunications research establishment's cavity magnetron and resulting H-2S radar proved as important to victory as any aircraft or bomb. Before H-2S, my crews flew blind, navigated uncertainly, and died without warning against German fighters they couldn't detect. H-2S transformed everything. Navigation became precise in any weather. Targets could be identified through cloud. More critically, approaching German fighters became visible on our scopes. The bombers gained situational awareness that allowed survival. Combined with Monica tail warning and Serrate allowing our night fighters to hunt theirs, centimetric radar reversed the night battle completely. The Germans had possessed technological advantage through Lichtenstein in 1941-42. We achieved superior technology through centimetric radar in 1943 and never relinquished it. This technological edge enabled the strategic bombing campaign that destroyed German industrial capacity. Modern historical analysis confirms these contemporary assessments. Dr. Alfred Price, in his comprehensive 1977 study, Instruments of Darkness, calculated that H-2S and associated centimetric radar systems reduced RAF bomber losses by approximately 40% from expected rates based on 1942 German night fighter effectiveness. Dr. Price's research demonstrated that German night fighters achieved kill rates of approximately 6% against bomber formations in 1942. This declined to 3.4% by late 1943 and 2.3% by 1944. The decline correlated directly with British deployment of centimetric radar systems. German night fighter effectiveness collapsed not because pilots became less skilled, but because their prey could see them coming. The Battle of Berlin, conducted from November 1943 to March 1944, exemplified the transformed technological balance. Harris launched 16 major raids involving 9,111 bomber sorties against Germany's capital. German defenses, still formidable, destroyed 492 bombers, 5.4% loss rate. But without British centimetric radar, losses would have exceeded 8% based on 1942 effectiveness levels. The technological edge saved approximately 300 aircraft and 2,800 crew lives. At the Royal Air Force Museum in Hendon, a permanent exhibit displays a restored H-2S radar unit alongside a captured German Lichtenstein BC system. The size comparison is striking. The British centimetric radar is compact, while the German meter wave system requires extensive antenna arrays. The technological gulf is visible even to non-technical observers. The exhibit placard notes, the development of centimetric radar, particularly H-2S navigation and bombing radar, transformed the strategic bombing campaign. British bombers gained electronic awareness exceeding German night fighter capabilities, reversing the technological balance that had favored Germany in 1941-42. This single technological advance saved thousands of Allied aircrew lives. March 24, 1943, 22,000 feet above the Ruhr Valley. Hauptmann Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer, positioned beneath a Lancaster bomber, his Lichtenstein radar guiding him to perfect firing position. The British crew flew blind, unaware of approaching death. Schnaufer fired, watching the bomber explode and fall. His 42nd kill represented German night fighter dominance based on technological superiority. 6 months later, that same technological advantage had evaporated. British bombers flew with H-2S radar, showing approaching fighters from 50 miles away. Monaco warned of threats closing from behind. Serrate-equipped mosquitoes hunted German fighters by following their Lichtenstein emissions. The hunters had become hunted, their advantage transformed into liability. Schnaufer survived the war with 121 victories, but his later combat reports showed increasing frustration. British bombers that should have been easy targets detected his approaches and maneuvered before he achieved firing position. British night fighters appeared impossibly, guided to his aircraft by following his radar emissions. The darkness that had protected German hunters became illuminated by British centimetric radar that German technology couldn't match. The Luftwaffe night fighters that had hunted RAF bombers successfully until 1943 found themselves visible from impossible distances. Detected by radar operating on wavelengths their equipment couldn't monitor, attacked by enemies guided by their own emissions. The technological superiority that had enabled their success reversed completely, and no amount of tactical skill could overcome fundamental technical disadvantage. The cavity magnetron, a component German scientists believed impossible to create with sufficient power, transformed night combat more completely than any tactical innovation. British bombers gained electronic eyes, seeing through darkness and cloud. German fighters remained dependent on meter wave radar that advertised their presence while providing inferior detection capability. Hauptmann Schnaufer's confident assessment in March 1943, the British fly blind at night, proved tragically temporary. By September 1943, British aircraft could see approaching threats from 50 miles, while German fighters struggled to detect targets at 3 miles. The hunters had become visible, their prey had gained sight, and the night sky over Germany transformed from German hunting ground into Allied killing ground, illuminated by centimetric radar German technology could never match.